Imagine waking up in the morning to a beautiful sunrise and conducting work on your farm. No worry or doubt set in your mind as you enjoyed your day spending time with your family. Then, off in the distance across the sea, a hole peeks through the fog, getting larger and larger until the red and white sails shine brighter than the sun. Suddenly, fear sets in as there is nowhere to run, and you must accept your fate of uncertainty with death. This is what it feels like for many Europeans living along the shore. Scandinavians could appear and disappear with their fast launch ships as if they were a ghost. The Viking Age would have never existed if it weren't for the Scandinavians' adaptability to craft and sail ships that could sail across the deepest oceans to the shallowest rivers. Any area of Europe that could be accessed from the water was very dangerous during this time period. These ships would appear without warning, were extremely fast and mobile. These ships were so important to Scandinavians that they incorporated them into their mythology, poetry, in runic inscriptions, and their funerals. So how did these ships evolve to become the terrorizing agent of the sea during the Viking Age? Shipbuilding in Scandinavia began hundreds of years ago before the Viking Age, as shipwrights constructed the first truly seaworthy ship, known as the Nydam ship, found in Nydam, Denmark, discovered in the 19th century. The ship was estimated to have been built around 320 CE. It was a large ship, 23.5 meters long and 3.5 meters wide. The ship had no sails though and had to be rowed. The Nydam ship could travel at high speeds with room for 25 rowers. But since the Nydam ship didn't have a sail, it wasn't seaworthy. These ships that could only be rowed had to stay close inland towards the shores. It is a mystery why the Scandinavians took so long to incorporate sails into their ships, as the Romans, people from Germany, and the British Isles had already done so before them. They wouldn't begin creating sails for the ships until the 8th century. Before the Viking Age, ships were built by what is known as either the clinker method or the lap-strake method. The main component of a ship was the shell, which was created from sawed planks placed side by side with a slight overlap. Small clinching nails, also known as clinkers, held the planks together. This method would make the sides of the hull appear to have small steps between the planks. The shell would become strong and flexible once frames and ribs are inserted to firmly shape the hull. During the Viking Age, planks were not sawed, but split from logs using either wedges or axes. With this method, the planks would follow the natural grain of the wood that would make them more flexible than planks that have been sawed. The best wood for shipbuilding was oak, which was found in southern Scandinavia. In the north, ships were more likely to be made from pine, as oak didn't grow there. There have also been instances where maple and birch wood were used. The square sails the Scandinavians used for their ships were not reliable. The sails would only work correctly if they were sailing with the wind. The square sails were very poor at beating to windward, which means that a ship must zigzag across the direction of oncoming wind to go any further. But reconstructions of the launch ship using the square sail have shown that zigzagging against the wind wasn't as bad as previously thought. They were able to tack across the wind in a rough sea, covering 30 nautical miles in a day, which is about an average speed of 1.3 knots. With larger ships and sails being developed, they no longer needed to hug the shores to sail, but were finally able to traverse the sea at their leisure. Once the Scandinavians had added sails into their shipbuilding, the world was at their fingertips. They could access all of Europe, reaching places such as Russia, Germany, the Middle East, Iceland, Greenland, and North America. The oldest sailing ship discovered from the Viking Age was the Osberg ship. It was built in Norway in about 815 to 820 CE. Pine wood was not properly attached to the mast, suggesting that sails were still a new technology for the Scandinavians. The ship is built low at 1.6 meters from the keel to the upper edge of the sides. The draft of the ship was 80 centimeters, about the length of a baseball bat, which was useful for maneuvering in shallow waters. The freeboard, which is the distance between the water and the upper edge of the boat's side, is similar in measurement to the draft. This meant that the ship wasn't safe to sail in strong winds or speeds faster than 10 knots. The Osberg ship was a stepping stone to what would become the fastest vessel in the ocean. Around the year 900, shipwrights began to develop two types of ships. The first was a long and sleek warship, while the other was broad and short, meant for carrying cargo. Both types of ships could carry an impressive amount of weight. One longship was found in the harbor of Hedeby, which was a Viking Age trading settlement. It is now located in Schleswig-Holstein, Germany. The ship dates to the year 1025, and the length of the ship was 25 meters, and the carrying capacity was around 60 metric tons. Even though these ships had sails, there was still room for dozens of rowers. An even longer ship had been found in Hedeby, as the Viking ship museum there had been expanding. The keel of the ship is composed of 3 separate wooden pieces, adding up to 32 meters, and the length of the ship was 36 meters long. There have been even more ships discovered in Hedeby, which shows just how important ships were to Scandinavian culture. As Scandinavians included their ships in their culture, chieftains would compete with one another on who had the longest and most decorative ships, but these ships that were used for flattery weren't of realistic proportions when it comes to actual Viking ships that went off on raids. The ship known as Skjoldelev 5 was 18 meters in length and had room for 13 pairs of oars. This was the size of a more typical longship. The longest Viking ship found was Skjoldelev 2, which was found in Dublin, Ireland. The ship was torn into 1,800 pieces at the bottom of the Roskilde Fjord and was discovered 900 years later. The ship was 30 meters long and could seat 60 rowers. The reconstructed ship took 2,700 hours to complete using 150 cubic meters, about twice the volume of a one-car garage, of oak. This was a serious dedication to reconstructing this amazing vessel, but creating the original ship over 900 years ago would have taken even longer. The original ship would have taken around 7 months to build. Without all the modern conveniences, nails and other iron materials would need to be forged, tar would need to be burned to create ship ropes, the sail would have needed to be sewn and weaved. In total, it would have taken the shipwrights around 40,000 hours to complete the ship. Creating such a massive feat in shipbuilding did not come without its drawbacks. The Scandinavians would spend months building one ship only for it to have a short lifespan. If the ship saw any action, they would need repairs soon after, and unfortunately, they usually were scrapped. Although if the ship only needed minor repairs, it was easy to find resources if there was wood around or a shipyard close by. But although ships were a beauty of craftsmanship, many of these ships would soon see war. Sea battles were not abnormal during the Viking Age. They would have momentous effects on not only chieftains and their clans, but entire kingdoms spanning the entirety of Scandinavia. One example of these sea battles was the Battle of Svolder in the year 1000, which was fought between King Olaf Tryggvason of Norway against a coalition of Danish and Swedish kings along with a Norwegian chieftain. This battle was completely fought at sea, with many warships being damaged and unrepairable. Ships had such a big cultural influence on Scandinavian society that they were included in the poetry of skalds reciting them to their kings or chieftains. One such poem by the name of Heimskringla would tell exciting stories of sea battles. For funerary customs, hundreds of people have been buried from small rowboats to full Viking longships depending on how wealthy the individual is. There are mentions of the afterlife in skaldic poetry in the poem Beowulf that tells of the funeral of the character Scyld, which tells of him sailing away on a ship. There are also runic inscriptions found on stones in Gotland, the picture stone Stora Hammars 1, and a Swedish runestone at Spånga in the outskirts of Stockholm. But Scandinavian ships not only served cultural purposes and war efforts, but also contributed to European trade and commerce, forever changing the economy with their longships. Scandinavian shipwrights forever changed the future of their history, from smaller rowing vessels to larger sailing ships, kickstarting the Viking Age. These ships forever changed the landscape of Europe forever, not only in cultural identity, but alliances and trading opportunities that wouldn't be available to them otherwise. They may have been behind other countries in terms of sailing technology, but once they understood it, they had an entire period of history named after them due to how influential and devastating they were to other European nations.